Why was Israel so attracted to Baal worship? Despite all the things God did to save them in Exodus chapters 7 to 12, and all the ways he protected them once they entered the promised land, the Israelites found that believing in Baal was a lot more appealing. They first started believing in him in the wilderness, according to Numbers chapter 25 verses 2 to 3, since they couldn't resist his attractive female followers, and they continued switching between him and Yahweh until the arrival of the Pharisees. Israel's love affair with Baal, literally and metaphorically, raises an interesting question. Why would they return to him over and over again? What made him so attractive? If we answer these questions, we might be able to identify his equivalents in today's society and avoid serving them. The first reason Baal was so attractive to the Hebrews was that he didn't require so much from them. They could commit fornication while serving him, as shown in Numbers chapter 25 verse 1. They could serve him and worship other gods, as shown in Judges chapter 2 verse 13. He didn't have a book full of rules that they had to obey, like Jehovah did. After all, Baal was the creation of the nations who served him, so even though it looked like they were serving him, in reality he was actually serving them. In addition, the Israelites liked serving Baal because the nations who worshipped him seemed to be doing better. For example, the Philistines believed in him and succeeded in wiping the floor with the Hebrews from Judges chapter 13 to 2 Samuel chapter 6, and they concluded that this was because Baal was more powerful than their own deity. It didn't help that they had a tendency to desire what the Gentiles had, which was why they would ask Samuel to give them a king like that of the Gentiles in 1 Samuel chapter 8 verses 4 to 5. Hosea would discuss this habit of theirs in Hosea chapter 3 verse 1. Most importantly though, the Israelites kept returning to Baal because they didn't have a strong relationship with their own God. For example, not long after praising Jehovah in Exodus chapter 15 verses 1 to 21 for saving them from Egypt, they accused his servant of trying to kill them. And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses, and said, "Wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt, to kill us and our children and our cattle with thirst?" Exodus chapter 17 verse 3. Talk about mixed messaging. God's people acted this way because they couldn't adapt to his style of leadership. He didn't have the time to babysit them every day, so he sent them prophets who would act as middlemen. The problem was, the prophets were human, so if they had any sort of faults, like Moses' inability to be in two places at one time in Exodus chapter 32 verse 1, and Samuel's inability to turn corrupt priests into perfect angels in 1 Samuel chapter 8 verse 3, they felt God shared those faults as well. Another quote-unquote problem was that to actually understand Yahweh, you had to do a lot of research and reflection on your own. As the psalmist said, "Thy word have I hid in mine heart, that I might not sin against thee." Psalms chapter 119 verse 11. The Israelites didn't want to put in this effort, so they became less and less knowledgeable about Jehovah. And by the time of the exile, the Jews had to be reminded to celebrate one of their national holidays, according to Nehemiah chapter 8 verse 14. Of course, we aren't any better than the Israelites just because we know Baal is fake. Many people today revere certain aspects of our society, and most of them do so for the same two reasons. For example, money is one modern contender for the title of Baal. Cash doesn't make us feel guilty or tell us what we should do with our lives, which is why the extremely rich Pharaoh could enslave the Hebrews in Exodus chapter 1 verses 8 to 11 with no moral qualms whatsoever. Plus, it's obvious that having lots of money usually leads you to incredible success. Wealth gives you access to private jets, vast mansions, and boring sports, and it gives you control over people who don't have such resources. As it was said in Proverbs, "The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender." Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7. Thus, money is a very potent force, and it is hard to escape its influence on our lives and our faith. The only way we can prevent it from becoming our deity is to deal with the third reason Baal was so popular. We need to develop a better relationship with Yahweh. To do this, we need to improve our knowledge of him. We need to chase away ignorance from our lives, or else we'll forget basic aspects of our faith, like the Jews did, or we won't be able to identify false prophets, who are numerous in these last days. As John said, "Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time." 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. This knowledge will help us understand what happens to people when they don't have laws to follow, and it will show us the fate of all those rich people we admire so much. As James told us, "Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten." James chapter 5 verses 1 to 2. They'll have a lot more to cry about than their missed flight to the Bahamas. Therefore, just like how all the nations who served Baal disappeared and Israel survived to tell another tale, all the people who serve modern equivalents of Baal will disappear and God's children will live on forever. As John said, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof. But he that doeth the will of God abideth forever." 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 to 17. The only balls we'll be dealing with are things like soccer balls. If we aren't North American, that is. And that is where I'm going to stop with this Bible Q&A. Why was Israel so attracted to Baal worship? They were attracted to Baal because he didn't require much from them, the people who served him were successful, and the Israelites themselves didn't have a good relationship with their own God. Thank you for listening! Don't forget to like and subscribe!